Thank you everyone for joining. We are very excited to be here today with you in this fantastic webinar. As I mentioned before, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Our fabulous Deborah from the Client Success Department will be answering your questions or any comments that you may have. So we will begin with the webinar. This webinar is called Build Community Cut Workload, Faculty Tools that Balance AA Efficiency with Human Learning. So before we do anything further, I would love to introduce our speakers. Please meet Marcia Bond and Alison Brown, who will be introducing themselves. So please go ahead, Marcia, and share a little bit about you.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Marsha Bone. I'm an instructional designer at DUville University currently. I have over 10 years experience in instructional design, teaching background as well, which has really helped with instructional design, as well as I'm an artist on the side as well. I do bookbinding, papermaking, and printmaking. Got to keep the creative juices flowing, right? And that's just a brief little bit about me. Oh, and for those who don't know where DUville University is, we're in Buffalo, New York, where today we are experiencing spring weather. Yesterday was like all four seasons, hailing 1 minute, sunny, then, everything. We got a little bit of everything. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Marcia. So go ahead, Alison. The spot is yours.
Okay, I am Allison Brown. I'm with Augusta University, specifically AU Online. I'm an instructional designer, and I have worked in instructional design for quite a long time, with AU specifically, only for about 2 years. My background was actually in instructional technologies and training, and as well as a long time in marketing and digital marketing. So, which has actually been pretty useful as well to bring to the table. But uh, had to come back to instructional design, had to stay in higher education. It's what I love. It's what I love to do every day. And so I'm just really happy to be here.
So, to start with the conversation, we know that right now everything that people is talking about is AI. We know that it's moving very fast, but we know also when we are in class, interaction hasn't caught up yet to the movement of how this is adapting to the world that we are living right now. So, IA has changed how courses are built, content is faster to create, and feedback can be supported really, really fast. But there's still one part that feels stuck, and that is getting students to actually engage to each other. So I would love to understand from your perspective and as instructional designers, what is the most common thing that you are seeing right now when you are creating the courses with faculty now that IA is everything that we talk about? So we can start in this part with Allison.
Um, Thank you so much. That's a great question. So I think, so do you mean specifically with AI? What are we seeing? What's the trend as far as what faculty worry about or what their concerns are?
Yeah, and not just with the IA in general, with how IA is changing, the educational environment. So
I mean, I think the concern is that students are losing their voice essentially because they're coming in. I mean, there's a lot of people who are concerned about obviously cheating and people using AI too much, instead of using AI as a thought partner or some sort of, or maybe even a guide, using it for plagiarism. Um, and I think that really translates into, yeah, I don't know who my students are if they're using AI, because not only are they cheating, but they no longer have a personality or thoughts of their own. And so that I think is the biggest concern. And then that always leads to, especially in online teaching, how do I keep them engaged enough to want to present their own personalities, and not seek something else to speak for them.
that is amazing. How about you, Marsha? What have you seen with your faculty?
As far as faculty, it's always like for RSI for online learning, it's always really difficult to, especially when we're having a course that's typically on ground and we're moving it to online, there's always that sheer panic of how am I going to interact with my students? And Allison's right, like the amount of AI that's being used for students like doing a reflection, instead of putting it maybe into their own words. I mean, I do believe too, like we have, a large population of international students, and sometimes you do see them using that to help them. So it's kind of more educating. We're trying to educate our faculty as well as our students about AI and the do's and do nots and the why should you not do something, or how can you use it in a more creative lens? Like, how about using it to create your own study guide or outline for what's coming next. And faculty are still a bit hesitant, um, but the ones that dive into it are usually like there's that moment where it's like, I don't know, but I'm gonna trust you. And then, we'll introduce them like, let's use Yellow Dig or, to do discussions. And there's so many different things you can do. And then after that first week, maybe when students are using it, they're like, we have faculty come back, like, I love this. Like,
Yeah.
because even like, they do just different features. So it's been it's like a teeter-totter in a way. It's back and forth and just trying to find that balance in some way. But it's never perfect, right? It's always one way or the other, or sometimes balance for a moment.
And
Right.
we keep learning because I think
Oh yeah.
everything keeps evolving and it keeps changing. And the
Oh yeah.
key to everything is finding the balance.
It absolutely
So
is.
yeah. So I know that you are the people that are very, very close to faculty when we are designing courses and when they are giving you feedback. So we have seen that what faculty is looking for is real interaction between the students, less repetitive grading, because the typical that we have is okay, post one, two comments, and the typical comment that we see is yes, I agree, or no, I don't think so. How do you grade that? And then also more time for feedback, mentoring, and course design. So, from these options that we have here, what is the most common that you are seeing and that you have seen through all your experience? What do you see that is not changing, even though we evolve, we have new tools, we have different ways of teaching students, everything here keeps evolving. What do you see that is still stuck? We
Oh,
go this time first with Marsha.
okay. Probably like when we're building online courses with faculty, telling them that there's a grade pass back and them actually experiencing the grade pass back, they again usually will come by and be like, this is amazing. I have so much more time to look at particular students, see who's posting, who's not posting, able to reach out to them to get to know them a bit better. And a lot of folks like the net graph so that they can particularly like like, oh, like Natasha's not doing anything at all. So what's going on there? Is she in add drop land or did something happen? So it's a really good way for folks to, I think, get to know their students and for the students to get to know faculty, two-way street, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree. And I think going back to it's really is about the balance. And so the thing that I hear most of all is how do I keep the engagement high? How do I keep the engagement extended? Because
Yeah.
especially if you're online, you don't have that sort of live classroom energy. How do I actually make that connection? Because a lot of folks still, I think, situate asynchronous learning in a space that's sort of vapid, this sort of area off in the cosmos that really is not something that is feasible for learning. And I think that that's a misconception because we have tools, like you said, that we can really encourage interaction with students. And there's not a lot to me that has changed as far as the need for engagement. So when you're online, you need the same level of engagement that you did in a classroom. So now we just need to look at
Mhm.
the platforms that cater to that. And something like Yellow Dig works really well because it is conversational and it's set up so that it's a little more organic and the students can talk to one another and have some interaction with their faculty. And the faculty are there, so they're not really guiding the conversation, but they have a presence there and they're able to model for the students what kind of reactions they want. And they're able to create or set the tone for the course, which is really hard to do in an LMS. No matter how good a writer you are or how good you are at videos, that constant engagement goes such a long way. And I think, yes, the grading is great because the poor faculty are always trying to balance how much rigor do I want in my classroom and how much do I really want to be reading all of these papers this semester or whatever. And with Yellow Dig, because that's turned off, I mean, not turned off, because the grading is based on the points and the participation, I find that the faculty not only enjoy that aspect of not really having to worry about the grading so much, the thing they like even more is the fact that they can actually be engaged in the conversation without being an evaluator all the time. And so they're listening and talking to students and connecting to them without assessing every moment. But indirectly, they're also getting a lot of great formative assessment. So they can look at what students are talking about and pivot in the classroom if they need to, or explain something a little more if they need to. And then, as we've been using it at AU, we find that not only can we have these great organic conversations, we can find other ways to use Yellow Dig as a platform that allows for kind of creative use situations. So I mean, it's been fun, and I think that's the biggest thing is finding platforms that extend that engagement.
That's amazing. And that's very true because sometimes we think that we are learning online, engagement is not something that is going to happen. And that is
Mhm.
that thing that we really need to work in to change. So I'm loving that you are finding ways to do that. So here comes your spot as instructional designers. So what do you think that you can do to help with all the problems that faculty facing? So what we come up to is define contribution structures, build peer interaction loops, align workflows to learning outcomes, and select tools that reinforce, not complicate design. So I think this goes on hand with what we were talking previously. So what do you think that usually you as instructional designers can do to help faculty with the building of the courses so they can have it a little, easy when they are face to face with the students to really get to engage with them, to really interact in the class. So this time that goes first, Alison, please.
Okay. Um, so I think one of the things that we do a lot of time, or especially well, since I've been here, is we really utilize the framework of the community of inquiry in our approach to addressing teaching presence and social presence and cognitive presence. So this is an instructional framework that I think faculty understand, and they understand that there's research behind it as we bring it more and more into the spotlight with the way we design. And so it really gives us a guide to make sure that we're addressing how to create those social spaces and teaching spaces online in an asynchronous environment. Um, I think we also have to build in all of the opportunities. So when we say that, say, Yellow Dig is ongoing conversation, then clearly we have to build that into the activities that they're doing for every module or every phase or whatever and so that it becomes a regular pattern. I think that's one of the most helpful things is that we do create patterns and workflows that students can identify with and can feel a part of so that they're sort of have this sort of light tether to the course, and continue to feel a part of it. Um, So yeah, and as far as not complicating design, I always go back to, again, we don't look for technologies and platforms just for the sake of having them in the course. We look at the learning objectives and what we need to get across, and that's where we start. What is it that you're trying to teach? And then let's just keep it as clean as possible and look out for usability and then what's going to actually meet those learning goals. In the best way with the increased with the most amount of rigor that you expect in a classroom.
That's awesome, Marcia.
All right. Kind of, Allison, everything you said. And to kind of piggyback off of some of what you said too, like with the course objectives especially, it kind of reminded me of this one course I was building with a nursing instructor for pediatric nursing. And she's like, this was really hard because they're doing infancy all the way to 18 years old. Like that's a wide range. And I was like, well, why, let's use Yellow Dig. And she was really hesitant because she'd never used it. And she calls herself not tech savvy. And I'm like, you're an online teacher, you are. So I was like, let's make you like, you're a really fun interactive teacher. Like you're wonderful with that. So let's make our topics like you. Let's make those topics like they're going to be super fun and engaging. So like one of them, it's a little gross, but we did like, is this cough up or is this a cough talking about like little kids or teenage gripe, like some, kind of just playing off of it, making it more engaging, and students kept coming back for that because they were like, even though we're on week 5, it reminded me of this thing we learned in week 2 where you have this funny thing about coughing or bowel movements with babies and like all these different funny things. So it really opened up the conversation. And because our students, like they're all at different, doing different clinical things all over the states, so they could really relate and talk about what was going on at where they were and what they were learning. So it was really interesting to see how those conversations grew. Um, and I think that really helps like destroy that kind of hesitation that instructors have.
Yeah.
Because then they're good. They're like they get that confidence. And now that particular instructor is like one of our lead like yellow dig people. Like she's very good at coming up with great topics and like, hey, what if I do this with my students? I'm like, do it. Like anything you want to try, this is great. You're getting the interaction and engagement, and your student satisfaction surveys are like off the charts. So let's do it. So I think it's just getting those
Okay.
You know
those
that
confident.
I
Yeah.
love that you could put in the same sentence cough and love and fun. So that's something that is really, really amazing for me to see how that goes on. And sometimes when you are having these type of courses that are not easy to go with, when especially online, I mean, it's hard things to learn, and when you can share with the students to make this easy for them to understand and to relate and to see, that makes everything different. It's a game changer for students and for faculty. So that's a great story to share. Thank you
Yeah.
so much,
It
Marcia.
It
sure
really is.
beats it sure beats the 3 prompts that are all the same and then
Oh,
having to
sure. For
respond,
sure.
right?
Yeah, because you can be casual. I think you can have a nice mix. I mean, going back to balance, you can have some of the more serious topics, but then mix in some of the lighter topics, just like you would in a classroom situation, if you were
Yeah.
talking about things, or putting in opportunities for students to contribute pop culture references to current courses. Obviously it depends on the type of course, or
Mhm.
the level of the course. So you have to keep that in mind. But when it's appropriate, yeah, tying what's happening in the real world to what's
Mhm.
happening in your course through Yellow Dig or through, that conversation is, I think, just so important. And it does make everything, all that content much more consumable
Yeah.
And relatable.
and
So
relatable. Yeah.
yeah. So now we're going into, deeper to what our actually conversation is focused. So where tools can actually help when designs come first. So what we've seen is that tools that can help you to improve your classes are participation tools, feedback tools, and insight tools. So in this kind of part of the conversation, I would love to know from your perspectives as ID, how do you usually find the kind of tools that help you with this sort of things that faculty are looking for? So how do you find these tools, and what makes you push the decision into introducing them with your faculty? Or sometimes I know that faculty comes with these ideas to you. So what makes you decide that they would work? So I think this time goes Marsha first.
Okay, so this is actually really interesting. I mean, for selecting tools, like it really depends on the comfortableness of the faculty, but also, what kind of course and course structure it is. I always think of this one course that I was building. It was for one of our pharmacy courses, and we had students from all over the states, and some students, I believe, were in Europe as well at the time. And we have with our pharmacy, we have like our own regulations for state and federal guidelines, but we also have COPA. So COPA wanted this piece because this particular class, it was law in pharmacy. And because students were all over, they were like, you have to accommodate each student because there's a different law for pharmaceuticals in every state. And the instructor was freaking out because they were in their accreditation. And he was like, can I do a Padlet? And I was like, you have 140 students in your class? No. Like, I mean, you can, but that would be terrible. Um, so I was like, what if we try this with Yellow Dig? Students have to post where they're from, post an article from their state. Like some people are from Chicago, Wisconsin, California, really all over. And it worked. It worked out really well because then the students were sharing like, oh wow, like that's a huge regulation in Chicago. I didn't know about that. I'm glad we're in New York, or all these different aspects. So when I think of design, I think always think of that situation because we were already using Yellow Dig in that course, but then the instructor came back and was like, "Oh my gosh, Copa, we're gonna get dinged. Like they need this." And how are we gonna make this work? And I was like, "I got you. Let's do it. Let's try this." And it's been great. Like students and faculty alike have been teaching it well. Faculty are learning as well, right? Because we're not all from New York, so it's really interesting. It's a great tool.
Amazing. That is incredible because it's a lot of
Yes.
information to share in there.
It's
So,
it
Alice.
is.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I agree. We have to look at what the instructor is actually comfortable with, and if the platform is appropriate for what the objectives are for that class. But yeah, with Yellow Dig, I mean, we have a lot of fun. I know it's supposed to be like a very um, loose conversation, or not loose, but an ongoing conversation. But we've created, just from thinking out of the box, different ways of using Yellow Dig ourselves, because it was an interesting way to get something done, And so, for instance, we have one an ethics course where they are actually using whiteboard to collaborate outside of class, right, asynchronously. But then they export their asynchronous documents and they post those in Yellow Dig and they talk about them. And so everybody can see what their thought process was and their collaboration process. And then there was a discussion about that in Yellow Dig. And so, and that's one of those situations where we're like, well, that's great that whiteboard lets you collaborate, but how on earth are they going to actually talk about this as a class? Well, we're already using Yellow Dig, same situation. Let's utilize that. We've also had simulation courses where students were actually role playing. One in particular was a National Security Council, and they had to convince the President of the United States, why their policy should be selected in a certain use case. And so that's what they did. They talked, and then they went into Yellow Dig, and they dressed up as their person, as their role, and they made their case in video and in writing, for why this policy. And they caucused, they did all kinds of things. I don't know if the National Security Council actually caucuses. I'm not really a political science person, but they worked in groups, they worked with the whole class. The instructor was giving them feedback as the president, and so there was a lot of interesting application and fun. And they seemed to, I mean, they just learned a lot. And throughout all of these different use cases that we have, we've got the great analytics that come with Yellow Dig. So we can actually look at what each member is doing, what kind of topics are being addressed, what's maybe not so popular, who's using hashtags, how do we increase that? And then, of course, yes, as you mentioned, the network graph, which I think everyone loves so much because you can see if John Doe is just floating off by himself, and then think about how to pull that person in, or if there's someone who's dominating. You don't want to stop them, but you want to encourage more participation from everyone else. And so you can think about strategies to make sure that everybody else wants to be just as involved. So yeah, I think it's really about just looking for what's new, but also about thinking outside of the expected sometimes as an instructional designer.
It sure is.
Being resourceful.
I love that word. Because it implies everything that you really need to do. I mean, resourceful, gets a lot of running in the process of designing and thinking and solving. So I love that word because, it seems very simple, but it has a lot of things going up behind.
Mhm.
So now I would love to talk about what is the shift that changes everything when you are doing a design on where you're creating or you're planning for your course. So usually what we have seen that a lot of universities and faculty are doing is adding more tools, creating more assignments, and usually increase the instructor oversight. So, what we suggest is to do a shift when you design to create clear participation frameworks, peer supported workflows, and a structure a student responsibility. So, I know that we have been talking about how you work with your faculty and when you start designing the courses, but what do you think is the biggest shift that you did when you were creating the courses and when you were talking with faculty that changed everything in the courses that you help with? So I think this time we go first with Allison.
So I think what's been happening lately is because we have been actually introducing Yellow Dig, and I know this is a Yellow Dig, presentation, but I really am very genuine when I say we introduced Yellow Dig, and when that became part of our design, it really changed some of the ways that we handled the other activities because now we had this engagement opportunity where we could actually reference other assignments or pull in other assignments. I'm not saying the whole course is structured around Yellow Dig, but certainly it became such an opportunity for there to be a sense of community, which is so easy to not have in an online environment. And I think that the thing that a lot of people miss and worry about. And so, yes, definitely when we're doing design work and thinking about sort of that rhythm that a course picks up, we're thinking more about um, how do we keep the students thinking about these topics? How do we keep them engaged and interested so that they're not just doing their work and moving on like a regular discussion board? Um, there's more of a back and forth, the sort of give and take with all of the activities because you know that if anything there's an outlet with Yellow Dig with that discussion post. So like we have even at our school even moved our Ask Your Instructor information to Yellow Dig, and so everyone can see when there's a question, um, and and so and I do think addressing the student responsibility, it's interesting because students do feel a lot more accountable when they're writing things in Yellow Dig, not just because they want to get the points, but because they actually want people to respond. And so they do try to write things that are engaging to other and interesting to other people, and they want people to say something back. And if an instructor actually addresses them, goodness, they have just hit the lottery, because they're in a conversation with their instructor and their peers. So not only are they learning things, but I think this is a great opportunity that we weren't sure we would, a lot of people weren't sure we would have in online education, to start building, not just that community, but that sense of self and a little bit of agency, through the conversations that we're able to either create or be a part of or even lead. And we now have a platform for that.
Yeah, I love that. Marsha.
Yeah, Allison, I really love how you were talking about the students having agency, kind of about like what they're learning, because we've done something similar, in encouraging students to do like more you choose. So like if they respond in a yellow dig, they can use the audio, they can video record. We've also had students do TikToks before, and then they get all the points for that. So that's kind of cool. But I also think of like our clinical mental health counseling program because we built it about a year and a half ago. And throughout the whole department, it is standardized that Yellow Dig is in for discussions. And it's kind of great because then it's meeting not only RSI, right, for state federal regulations, but it's also meeting their accreditation standards. So like even the accreditors were like, what is this? This is great. Like you're
What
using this.
happened?
Can we play with this? So we had to like set it up for them, which was really wonderful. And even in that, as students progress on, we've had them use instructors actually put topics in where like, kind of like, are you stressed this week? Because you guys have had a million, exams and everything. And they'll put something in like it's your choice kind of topic. And that's when we have students a lot of times like they'll do a TikTok or some instructors have like a competition and it's like whoever like for more a bonus, but they'll be able to kind of do a poll of okay, like these three students did the bonus and they're actually they one made a TikTok, one made a PowerPoint presentation with like a Panopto, and then somebody else did like a podcast. So, and then the students get to vote on their classmate. And it's still about the curriculum, but it's making it more engaging and fun. And then it's like adding the you choose and like students just really, it's livening up different courses that are maybe a little like statistics in pharmacy is so hard. And some of these videos the students have done, I'm like, this is amazing. Now I want to learn statistics. So it's really quite interesting what there's so many fun, engaging ways to do it. And it's always like I'm Alison, I'm sure you get it too. Like some faculty like, okay, I really like Yellow Dig now. Can we do this? And you're like, I never even thought of that. Yeah,
Right.
we can try that. Let's do it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, there is 1,000 things that you can do, and I love that the part where faculty is really trying to understand the world of the students because the world is not the same as it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, not even a year ago. So the part that a faculty is even open to hear to what the students want to do and how they understand now even learning because this has changed a lot now students don't have so many ability to stay focused for longer periods, so you need to create something that keeps them engaged. So that's amazing, and I love that faculty is open to that and are really trying to figure out how to move into this world because it's what we have and it's not going to go back.
Right. That's very
Oh,
true.
yeah, it's not, and I find that a lot of our faculty, and I'm sure everywhere, that I mean, they're in it to teach the students, right? They're in it
Yeah,
because they love it, and
yeah,
so any any pushback is really not about not liking the technology. A lot of times, it's just not understanding how to use it yet,
yeah,
and you don't know what you don't know, and so you have to sort of help them have those use cases that we've been talking about, and sort of destroy all the misconceptions very slowly, chip away at them, um, and then they're in it. Yeah, then they embrace it because then they're like, oh, okay, I get it now. Yes, the light bulb has gone
yeah.
off, and yeah, it is a big deal.
It's like you were right. So now I'm going to move forward
And
a
I
little
and I
bit.
tell my
Um,
faculty that as well. I told them I was right all along, just so you
we love to be right. We all love that part of saying, I was
know.
So now we're going to move a little further. I don't want this to be exclusively about us and Yaldi, but I know that we saw that there are three main critical parts where a tool can be helpful, and Yodi can help you with all those three. So basically, when you create a community with Yodi, what you see is that everybody is engaging every time, and you can go back to things that you learned in week one and then come back to a topic that you are talking about in the end of the semester. So that is what we've been talking about, that these amazing two ladies have shared their own experiences. So there is three ways a Yeldy community improves your course. It helps you create belonging, less grading, more guiding, and engagement that lasts. And in here, I want you to share your biggest and fun story about Yeldy. I know we have been shared a lot before, but I want you to share the one that you say, this is the one that I really need to share. So now let's go ahead first with Marcia.
Okay, that's tough. There's so many. Only because like it's always evolving. Um, oh man, I probably have to say too, even in our first year experience courses, like that's always great to have. At one point we did have Yellow Dig in it. And students, I don't think they realized like instructors are seeing this and they were kind of, they're awkward 18-year-olds, but it was the best because they were so honest. We did in the particular course I was building, we did like different interaction things and students, that's where I got the idea for doing TikToks because students started doing them and they were great starters for conversations. And like I've never done a TikTok, but I was like, this is very inspiring, right? And even to the other students, it was great. Because that particular group was all international students. So they were from all different, backgrounds, and they were all not native English speakers. So it was great to see the crosstalk of, hey, do you guys have this where you live or no? Or do you guys do this? So it was really interesting to see all those little things and them to share too. Like one student shared, I think it was like in the introduction the first week about how her cat had just had kittens. So she was sharing photos and videos, and all the students were, wild, and we were able to group it into the course, like bring it back in. But it was really great, like to see how it expanded so quickly.
That's amazing. Allison.
Gosh, we do the same. We try to use it in a lot of different ways. I think probably the funnest thing that I've seen that we've used, or the most impressive, was we introduced it to our student orientation, and which I had not really thought about at first, um, and because I was just relating it to a course, but we opened it up as part of our student orientation, and the students, my concern at first, even as a designer, was will they know what to do? Even if we give them instructions or some guidance, will they really? Because these are students who are, AU Online handles graduate programs only. And so these are graduate students who, may come in and think this is silly, or, maybe they just don't have time for this, but they really jumped in and embraced it. And because we're all social media, or a lot of people are social media literate now, they knew exactly what to do. They jumped in and started making videos. They asked each other questions. There's a lot of peer-to-peer, just like there's peer-to-peer learning in the courses. There were a lot of people answering each other's questions, and it became a little bit less of a burden for our student success coaches to have to guide those new students because they were answering each other's questions. Also, it was nice because they were meeting students from other disciplines. So, because we just lumped them all in, at the beginning, and then they sort of part ways and go into their own programs. But it was so much fun. And they're saying things like, what is this thing? This is really cool. I really like this, and going on and having these great conversations. So much so that we actually created a student hub now where we have Yellow Dig as part of that. And that just includes everyone at AU Online, all the students. And so they can come in and talk as a community to other people in other disciplines and sort of create that. I think we were trying to think of like what when you have those great conversations with that person over there in the hallway. That's kind of what we're doing with the student hub. Suddenly you've run into somebody who has some interest that you would never normally run into, but here they are. And so they're making
Yeah.
connections, networking, and it's been really fun.
I love that. It's like you move the cafeteria into an online environment. So people that are studying online, that maybe
Yeah.
are working, that maybe are in different parts of the world, they can have that experience that you usually have when you are in a class live and where you are in campus. So I love that. And that's amazing. So I don't know if anyone has any question, but the last question that we have for you guys is how to choose tools that actually reduce workload. And I think it comes back to a question that I asked you before, but how do you actually get to understand when a tool really works? I mean, and how do you choose it? I mean, I know that we have a lot of different apps and tools that we can come up with new ideas every day, and people keep creating new tools and new apps and new things. So how do you decide which one to go with and which one works? I think this time we go with Marsha, I think, or with I'm last. So
I don't remember either, to be honest.
okay.
I think it's Marcia.
Okay. Um, so basically, like when we start designing a course with a faculty, we always let them know about Yellow Dig as a tool, and we all of our other tools like Padlet, Panopto, some other ones we're using, like we use this one, it's called LM Notebook for it creates podcasts. Like with and you can feed it a PowerPoint and it'll generate a whole entire podcast is for that, so basically it's kind of breaking that down and also how many students are in the online course because our nursing and pharmacy courses they're very big cohorts, so they can have up to like 180 students at some point. And if that is the case, we're always like, hey, you should use Yellow Tick.
Yeah.
And some instructors, they're like, nope, I'm gonna do a discussion. I'm like, all right, well, that sounds terrible, but I will roll with it. So, and usually after they're like, oh, I'm so burnt out. I'm like, can we try Yellow Dig now? And they're like, all right, I'll give it a try. And they get always very nervous, right? Because we're such creatures of habit. But usually after that, they're like, I'm very grateful because I have all this time. I'm actually getting to know some of my 180 students. And they're having a good time too. Not just worrying about getting their points, they're interacting, they're forming study groups together. They're asking very, poignant questions, that kind of thing. So that's kind of where my mindset is. If it's a larger classroom, we're definitely going to encourage Yellow Dig. But even in our physical therapy classes, they're rather smaller, maybe 26 to 32 students. But it's still really great because the faculty put so much time into the feedback that they're giving because it is a smaller group of people that they feel they can because they're not worried about the grading. So they're investing that time back into their students, which has been that's been a game changer too. So
I think that's
Alex.
so important. I'm with you there, Marshall. I mean, being able to put their time back into the students as opposed to always being worried about getting their grades in.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think when we look at the tools that we're using, that's one of that has to be a consideration because we always have to consider that balance for anyone involved. Um, and I think Yellow Dig works really well, to balance out some of the other tools. I mean, again, I look at the online classroom as really needing that engagement to stimulate learning.
Mhm.
And so anytime we can look at things from the point of view of how are we going to get students to talk to each other and talk to the student, I mean to the instructor, and get those the instructor get those RSIs in, um, that's that's really important to us. And so we do use things like Hypothesis, which is an annotation tool, or VoiceThread, and then we use other platforms to bring into the course, to always keep the students. We don't want to overwhelm anyone. Like, we all know about cognitive load and all that. And so we're very intentional about what we're using, but we're very much about what's going to, enhance the course, without overloading the students or the faculty. I mean, I've actually been on both sides of the coin where I'm, designing, and I've been a student in a course that had, say, yellow dig, and it's a very different experience. And I've had faculty who are really resistant, just like Marcia did, and wanted to go back to the D2L. And I say, why? And they say, well, I want to be able to, I want them to be able to answer fully. And I say, okay, why would they not do that? Why would a student not do that in yellow dig? Well, I'm not sure. And then, well, but I really hate that I have to grade all these things, And I said, well, that's another reason to maybe use yellow dig, because, you're not, no, you're not grading, and they're not getting graded on the quality of necessarily of their posts. No. But if you're there and you're seeing what they're writing, then you're a part of that, or what they're putting up there. And I think that's one of the things that we really have to tap into with faculty is you still have to be there, and we still need to develop you in such a way that you understand what your role is now. Because as someone said in the chat, as Heidi said, this is a paradigm shift. And so they have to really look at the tools are not the end game. And so we're all about just making sure that not only are the tools available, but that they're actually being used properly and understood. The faculty themselves have to be able to make that connection. You can only tell somebody about something so many times. They have to make that connection. So yeah, I think once they do, that reduction of workload, it sort of happens organically. It sort of happens on its own, because then they're able to sort of see clearly what kind of community they can build, and then what their learning goals are going to be and how they can meet those through ongoing engagement as well as other activities.
Yeah, I think that's the best point too that you mentioned, Alison, is that it happens organically. And that's the best part. It's like because we don't want to force it on someone because they're not going to want to learn it. But once
Mm-hmm.
like it organically flows through, like it's so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I love that. And I love that the fact is that the most important thing when you choose a tool, whichever it is, maybe if it's Yellow, maybe it's not. But the thing is that it really helps you and it doesn't give you more work. So when you pick whatever tool you want to use to help your faculty, or if you're a faculty to try to reduce a little bit or help you with your workload, the real truth is that you really find the one that helps you and doesn't give you more burden. So I would love to go with a final takeaway. The most important thing that we can suggest to you is replace rigid post counts with contribution models. Use tools to surface, not enforce participation, and design peer interaction cycles. So basically, the idea that we wanted you to go with this webinar is that not all tools are really necessary, but when you pick a tool, you need to be sure that it's a tool that is going to help you, to give you that insight that we are looking in a class, and to help you to get your engagement. So in this point, I don't want you to just share your final thoughts, any suggestions, or that you can give the people that attended the webinar and faculty or other ITs. So let's go ahead with Alison.
Oh goodness. I would say keep an open mind with everything, with every platform. Think outside of the box. Don't try to, when you're designing a course or thinking about what you want your students to experience in your course. It's great to come up with a plan, but let it be fluid, so that you can build those engagement opportunities in, and work work with your instructional designer because your instructional designer knows an awful lot about pedagogy and andragogy and understands the platforms and how to integrate them. And then they rely on you to be the subject matter expert and to help guide them in that direction. And it is a collaboration, just like with the tools, it's all about building a collaborative learning environment.
Amazing. Marcia.
Yeah, ditto. To be honest, like I think that's part of being an instructional designer is like keeping that open mind and having asking faculty to kind of keep an open mind. And then once they trust you and to be able to move forward into using a new tool, it's always like great to hear how, like for our clinical mental health counseling folks, they were very nervous to use a new tool. They had never used Canvas because they were all so new at our LMS. And once we got them more confident, they were able, to like they're giving presentations in all these different places, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I use Yellow Dig for our whole department." And people are like, "What? Tell us more." And they're like, "I felt like a guru, but I'm not." And I'm like, "But you are. Like, you've gone through all those hoops and you've learned so much." And you're doing it in so many different ways, like how you utilize it. So it's really great to just kind of help boost that confidence for folks. Um, Even sometimes our students that are like, I'm taking an online class and I got Yellow Dig and I'm just not sure. And you're like, oh, okay, let me just show you these couple tricks. And they're like, I'm in. They're switched over. So it's good. It's fun.
Amazing. So I think that the biggest word that I get with you too is collaboration and open-mindedness.
Yeah.
Because if you're not open to whatever, whichever tool can benefit you, then you're not going to see any change. So I
Mhm.
don't know if we have any questions from our attendees. I don't see anything in the chat. So if you have any questions, please just feel free to share it in the chat. If not, I just want to thank you so much for being part of this conversation. I think we go with amazing insights about what we have talked here. So I'm very, very happy of how this turned out. So thank you so much for sharing all your experiences and all your knowledge. Um, I think we all go with a lot of different ideas of what we can do with the tool. Even for us here, hearing you how this ways you're creating to use the tool is amazing for us because you keep giving us ideas of what we can improve and how it can really improve. So I see that Rhonda is asking if there's a workshop to help us build Yaudik. Yes, you can meet with our amazing client success team. So I think that if you can just leave us your email, we can contact you and help you in this amazing transition. So you can reach to Dav. She's amazing. So I don't know if we have any other questions, or if not, I really thank you all for being here today and for sharing this conversation with us. So I don't see any questions, so I will just close the webinar. I don't know if you, Alison, Marcia, have any final words that you would like to share. Please go ahead, Alison.
I don't think I have anything else to share other than, have fun. If you can dream it, you can build it. And Yellow Grade is a great tool to help you do so.
Yep, absolutely. Ditto. Thank you for having us. It's been a great
I
conversation.
love it.
Yeah.
I love this webinar has been a copy paste conversation. So I love that. It's amazing. So thank you so much, guys. And I hope you have a great week and a rest of the day. Thank you for being here today. And we'll see you in our next webinar next month. Enjoy. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.